today's studio guest is Edel Collins, General Manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific, Cork. Edel, thanks so much for coming in to us.
Thanks very much, Anne, and thanks for having me.
I'm going to kick off by asking you a little bit about the organisation. You know, people will know the name, but they may not know a lot about it. So if you can tell us a bit about the organisation globally, and then maybe give us a sense of what goes on in Ireland, and then particularly, obviously, the site in Cork.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, I remember asking the same question myself, who are Thermo Fisher Scientific? And at that time, our site in Cork was acquired by Thermo Fisher. We had previously been GlaxoSmithKline. And I remember, we were Googling mad, who are TFS and what's CDMO, and trying to understand a little bit more about Thermo Fisher Scientific. So what we learned and what we found out then and what we know now is that it is a global company with over 125,000 employees worldwide, and a world leader in serving science. And I think that's something that we're very proud to be associated with and excited by when we heard about Thermo Fisher Scientific as well. The mission of the company is quite clear. It's to enable its customers to make the world healthier, cleaner and safer. And I think that's something we can identify with. And I think the people at Cork were excited that this was a company that they could get behind. In terms of the reach of the company, it's expanded and grown over time, and really now what it provides customers is an end-to-end integrated solution. And I think what that means is, we can bring molecules to medicine, we can bring data to testing, trials to detection, across a range of end-to-end supply chain solutions for customers. So a fantastic company to work for. Within Ireland then, I think it is still a question, about Thermo Fisher Scientific. Not a lot of people know about it widely, but since 2019 the brand has grown. We've gone from about 70 employees to over 1,000, and that came with the acquisition of our site in Cork, and then the PPD site in Athlone was also acquired by Thermo Fisher. So now a much wider presence, and we continue to grow the brand. I think initially we were known more in the lab space, but now we've expanded into clinical trials, analytical and pharma services in Cork. The Cork site then, is a fantastic site in Cork, a state-of-the-art facility, fantastic laboratories and a really, really great team. We're really privileged at Cork to make the active pharmaceutical ingredient for medicines that treat a huge amount of diseases for patients, so such as oncology, lupus, HIV, Parkinson's, psoriasis, COVID, lots of different opportunities for patients. So, it's a proud industry to be part of, and the people at Cork are really privileged to be involved in that industry. So.
Thanks for that. That was a lovely, succinct description, and I know more already now.
Good.
After you telling me that. I'm going to come back to Thermo Fisher Scientific, but I'd love to just get a little bit of sense of yourself and how you got here. I think you're the first woman general manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific. Tell us a little bit about your journey to here.
Sure. So, first of all, I'd say I never dreamed of this job. It wasn't a plan or a goal for myself. And I certainly didn't see, or put on the list that that's a job that I'd like to do. I grew up in Cork. I'm still living in Cork. There was 4 siblings. Our parents, I think, they exposed us to everything. So, whether it was music, GAA, dancing, ballet, everything was kind of tried and tested. And there was an expectation as well that the same thing would happen in school. You try all the subjects, you do your best, you work hard. And it was interesting because, both my parents, they hadn't been to college, they hadn't done any of those activities themselves, but they took us everywhere. And I think that's kind of my own memory of my childhood, is that, you're always being brought places and trying things. So then for myself, my mum would always be looking at different subjects, what were the right choices for the Leaving Cert. And when I did eventually go to the Leaving Cert, I was still in that place where what do you actually do? My brother actually did his Leaving Cert with me at the same time, and he was really clear he wanted to be a physio. And I certainly was jealous of that. I was like, God, I wish I knew what I wanted to do. So for the Leaving Cert, I did a range of subjects. I did chemistry, biology, I did biz org, accounting, and just kind of spread out the range of topics. And then went on, I think, to pick a subject in college that was meeting that range. So still not wanting to specialise, I decided to do commerce in UCC. Probably had a little bit of a liking for psychology, law, business, but still not really sure. So sticked with kind of a general degree and made my way through commerce. When I was finished commerce, I was still in that unsure bucket, and went on to do a master's in management accounting and IT for another couple of years. And then, it wasn't the easiest time to get jobs back then. I worked in a bar for a while. I got a job in a bank before eventually getting a job in GlaxoSmithKline in Cork. And that was almost over 20 years ago now. So a long time working on the site. And the site brought with it all different challenges and opportunities, as well as my life did at the time. But I had huge opportunities on the site. I started in systems, I worked in IT, I moved into finance, project management. Eventually I moved into operations, which was probably a job I never thought I'd go to. And now 3 years as site general manager, it's been a kind of unusual road to get there. I think what I learned from it is that, it's okay not to have a plan. Maybe going back to, what my parents thought was to try everything, and you learn what you get energy from, and you learn what you're good at, and you learn what you don't like as well. But I think that journey of trying things, working hard, and trying to be your best at it as well, ultimately led me to kind of find different ways and different paths along the way.
I love it. And in that context, I would see you as a great role model for young women looking at getting into that industry possibly. I think it's something quite close to your heart as well, am I right?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that's important for females is to see females. And, I saw all different types of leaders. A lot of them were men when I was growing up. I didn't think anything different when it was a female leader, but sometimes, you'd hear things in the background, like, about having children or about your work-life balance, about even females in STEM. So I think, it's important, for kids growing up and the next generation is just to see everybody in the room, men or female, and just see that anything is possible. When I was appointed to the general manager, Hilda, who supports our site leadership team, had a lovely picture for me, and it was all of the general managers from the last 50 years. So our site is just celebrating 50 years this year. And so obviously I was the only female, and my daughter, who's 12 now, was looking at the picture, and she said, she was kind of making a few comments about the people in the picture. And then I said, did you notice I was the only female? And she was like, oh yeah. And I was like, what do you think of that? And she was like, so what? And I think that's important, because she didn't see that. She just saw different people doing different jobs. And I think her expectation, she grew up playing hurling with the boys. She didn't see herself any different. But I think it's important, as a female leader, that you continue to show people that you can be a leader, that it doesn't matter. You have to keep doing your best, trying your hardest. You'll get there. But it's important to show, I think, generations coming that that type of leadership exists. And I think the other side of that is that it's important to have the balance. So the work-life balance is important, so that, some of the leaders that I saw, they were always traveling, or there was, sometimes I was wondering how much sacrifices they had to make to achieve the role. And that's why I think sometimes as a female leader, it's important to show that you can be the leader, but you can also, have a really good work-life balance. And for me, like, I was lucky enough to have three kids. The youngest is 6 now, and the balance with them is really important to me. Myself and my husband are very invested in their sport. We're always trying to, coach them. I'm sure they call that something else. And, like my own parents, we try to take them everywhere. Someone said to me recently at a match that they didn't realise that I worked outside of the home. And I thought it was the biggest compliment I could get, because that someone wouldn't notice that you're always there, and that's important to me, that I don't miss things, that I'm at the matches, the running, the gymnastics, or whatever. So look, it is important, and I hope that, watching other female leaders, that I learn a lot from them as well.
I love it, and it's so important that attitude that your daughter has, that doesn't change when she gets into the workspace, so I think that's where the role models are so important, that she continues to feel that, oh, well, why not?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, look, in that context, I want to ask you a little bit about leadership as well, and sort of your own thoughts on, what a good leader looks like. I know that's very general, but I mean, good leaders that you'd have seen over the years, or what you think good leadership looks like now.
Yeah, like I think it's hard to find, one leader. And, even when I talk about people making sacrifices, you learn from that as well, because sometimes you've done the exact same in different ways. So I think over time, there was probably people I modelled myself, when I was earlier in my career. And then as time went on, I probably looked at things that were good in leaders and things maybe that I didn't like. When I got the role of general manager, somebody said to me, now that you're the general manager, you need to be different. You need to be the general manager. And I remember saying to John at home, like, what does that mean? And I said, I don't want to be somebody else. Like, and how do I be the general manager? And I remember his comment to me was, well, you've got this far being yourself, so why don't you keep going? And I think those type of things are important, because, even a simple sentence where he kind of said, you don't need to be somebody else. He was like, you probably need to act different in certain circumstances, but you successfully have gone this far just by doing that. And I think, to answer your question, I think leaders who are like that, who are authentic, who stay kind of true to their own values, it shines on them better. And I like to see that coming through as well in our own team. I think, building on that a small bit more, the leaders that invest in others are probably the leaders that I'd role model myself against. And I've been really lucky to have worked with a number of those leaders over time. Maybe as a female, but I think this is the same for males. You've lots of people talk about the glass ceiling and different things, but I think, sometimes you just create your own obstacles yourself internally. So for example, I'd see jobs and John would be like, oh, you should apply for that. And I'd be like, well, I'm not even qualified. And, I'd say things like, oh God, how can I do that job and still go to gymnastics 3 times a week with the smallies, or how I miss matches. So you have internal thoughts all the time telling you what you can't do. And I think externally, I saw that as well. I'm not a chemist or an engineer, which would be unusual in a chemical manufacturing plant. I hadn't worked shift. I had mentors who taught me over time that, to really be a director or a general manager, you'll have to travel. It'd be hard to manage if you had more than 1 or 2 children. You hear all of these things, right? And sometimes people say them just in a conversation. But they do actually land with you, and I remember thinking, God, you couldn't have 3 kids. And then I think that's where real leaders, you see it sometimes more in a pitch, people who know how to get the best out of their team, organise their team, and to support talent. And I think John, he said to me when roles come up, just apply for them. And I had a really good general manager a number of years ago, and I was 9 months pregnant. I was on my last day, and he called me into the office and he said, when you come back now, I think you should come out of finance for a while. And I was in finance at the time, and maybe lead a team. And I remember I was nearly bouncing out to the car park, thinking this guy is talking about when I come back and future opportunity. So I remember that had a huge impact on me. And I think the last example I give, and I have loads of examples, is when we were acquired by Thermo Fisher, I actually decided to take 2 years maternity leave. So when I left, it was GlaxoSmithKline. When I came back, it was Thermo Fisher. It had been Thermo Fisher for 12 months with a new GM, and it was a big challenge coming back, and it was COVID. Everybody was doing everything on Teams and wearing masks. And about 2.5 months after I came back into the role, that general manager said to me, you'll be my successor. And I thought it was so challenging coming back to the workplace. I had 3 kids now. I didn't know him or anybody else. And, to have somebody that says, yeah, you can do it. Now believe yourself to do it. So I think now for myself as a leader, what I've learned is that, you do have to try things. You have to put yourself out there, and, it's uncomfortable at times. But if you have people who can support you, they do help open your mind. Sometimes, they leave a ladder for you, or they give you a little push in the right direction. And I'd be eternally grateful for that. And I think as myself as a leader, I hope that, I invest enough time in making sure that I support the generations coming up and help the talent see sometimes what they can't see themselves. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. And you mentioned it there, the huge change, I assume, from GSK to Thermo Fisher Scientific. I'm always interested in change management. Tell me a little bit about the challenges and what it was like.
Yeah, so back in 2019, maybe just to describe the site a small bit, we'd been through 2 or 3 years of restructuring, or 2 or 3 different restructures over the years. And, we were at 40% utilisation, so people could feel the stress in the system, the pressure, people were worried about the future. And then there was an announcement that there was going to be an acquisition. And people weren't sure what did that mean. And then we were acquired, and it was just, as I said, in the height of COVID, and we went full on into manufacturing 2 of the big COVID products. And that meant we had to rapidly change, rapidly manufacture. The timelines were suddenly the shortest we'd ever seen. So I think in terms of the change management, initially, it was, wow, we had to do it. And it was very clear. And it was exciting as well because there was opportunity in it. I think then as, rolled 12 months on from that, and we saw that, if you stand back a little bit, our site wasn't structured to now act as a CDMO, which would be more agile and more flexible because you're doing contracts for your customers. So we had to look at ourselves. We were only serving one customer. We were kind of making to stock. We were only investing in 1 or 2 development programs a year. We were bureaucratic. We were aligned as if we were still GSK. So we had to take a step back as a leadership team, and we've a fantastic leadership team in Cork with lots of experience, and people could take that knowledge and say, right, we have to break down what we have. We in some ways have to start again, restructure, reorganise. We had to invest heavily in development because that was to be our key competitive advantage. And we had to organise ourselves in terms of this is the way we want to operate for the future. We're now customer facing. So we have now a customer on site nearly every week. Previous to that, the customer was internal. It was GSK, so we knew the customer. So upskilling ourselves in terms of how to manage the customer was also a huge part of that change. But I think all through it, the common thread is the culture. We've a really strong team in Cork, but you have to make sure that people continue to grow and learn and they can see the opportunity in the change. I think we were lucky in some ways that the change was in front of us. That move towards COVID, people could see the activity straight away. So it was positive from a change management perspective. But that continued, and I think the investment in changing the structure and the culture helped and ultimately led us to, we've just signed our 28th customer. Wow. We've doubled our output. We have probably 10 development programs now versus the 1 or 2 that we used to have. I think the easiest way to describe it is in the laboratories, you'd walk in and you'd see 1 or 2 chemists. Now you walk in and, you're in the way. So it's much more exciting for our chemists and our engineers. You've development every day and the scientists love what's coming in the door. And I think for ourselves, the impact of being so close to the customer has helped us on the change journey as well, because you learn from the customer, you can see the impact, and I think that's been a really positive motivating effect as well of the change.
And with that level of growth, what has it been challenging finding the talent? Because, again, you're talking about chemists and highly qualified people.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Yeah, so it's a constant challenge. And I think, it is a competitive market. And where we are in Cork as well, it's a competitive landscape. And I think, if you go back to the brand, it is important that people know the brand. So we have to make sure that people invest in sharing the brand around, whether it's with the colleges or with the schools or just, even marketing, to make sure that people know exactly what Thermo Fisher do and that they don't have some preconceived notion of it. So I think that's important. But I think as well, the leadership piece is important. We have to attract talent, but we have to retain talent as well. And my view is that people will leave people. And, if we invest in the leaders, we keep people in, but we also attract people because people hear about them. They want to work with them, especially in Cork, in the area there, people know, everybody knows everybody.
Word of mouth.
And they hear, and we have some great leaders in the laboratories that people want to go and work with. So I think that's important. But I think the collaborations is the other thing. We've great collaborations with the colleges all over Ireland, and that creates a nice pipeline. We often recruit from the intern programs, and now we try to invest in the schools as well, and even try to see, make sure that when they go to UCC or they go to UCD or they go to wherever or across Ireland, that they know that this is one of the places that they could do an internship in. But it is something that you have to invest your time in, because I think there's always somebody around the corner that is also looking for talent. So you have to make sure that people know what you have and know what you have to offer.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And IDA are our partners on the Leaders Room. Tell us a little bit about how they have supported you over the years.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to say is that they're like an extension of the team. It's a great partner to us in Cork. When we converted to Thermo Fisher, again, they became our partner. They showed us how to engage with the stakeholders. If there was investment opportunities, they were always 2 steps ahead of everybody else in terms of trying to ensure that they can get the stakeholders to Ireland or to get support for investment in Ireland. I think the huge success story for ourselves and the IDA, which we celebrated jointly on site last year, was the celebration of 10 years of our wind turbine. As you drive into Ringaskiddy in Cork, you'll see the turbines, which was a collaboration across the pharma companies at the time and the IDA. So now we have about 25% of our electricity from our turbine, but we've now gone on, we've a really passionate team on sustainability to get to our carbon net zero goals, and the IDA have helped us with that strategy and are supporting our future ambition. So I look forward to see what's to come. The team is ambitious and the IDA are supporting in the background. But I think the other thing is the skills and the talent, as you just talked about. The IDA offered us a lot of support on the upskilling from going from big pharma to CDMO, and there's still a lot of support available now to continue to grow the talent, because we want to make sure that we always have the best scientists, the best innovation. But that support had been really instrumental in the change that we talked about, because we did have to change how we acted and how we worked, and the IDA played a huge part in that.
Very good. And then finally, just the future. What does the future look like for?
Yeah, so I think the macro environment at the moment, the economic environment is evolving every day, right? So I think you have to be prepared to change, and I think that's the most important thing, to be keeping, as I say, try to be keeping ahead of it. So do your scenario planning, looking to see what are your potential different options. Within Ireland, I think the CDMO landscape is actually starting to grow, and I think that is an opportunity within Ireland. We could leverage our own ecosystem to attract global talent, attract investment, and keep investment in Ireland as well. We have the pharmaceutical in Ireland, and now we have a growing CDMO world to support manufacture and to keep the manufacturing in Ireland. So I do think there's opportunities within Ireland. And then for the site itself, we're really ambitious for the site. I'd love to see the customers doubling again. I'd love to see the amount of leaders that we create, scientists, specialists to double and quadruple. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we can create more life-saving medicines for people all over the world. So that would be our ambition.
Edel, your enthusiasm is contagious, I have to say. Thank you so much for telling us all about Thermo Fisher and so much about yourself and your journey as well today. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. It was nice to talk to you. Thanks, Anne.